and we'll start a round of questions. Administrator Milgren, is it fair to say that the vast majority of fentanyl trafficking comes into our nation through official ports of entry?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. As you know, the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for the American border and the ports of entry, so DEA is not engaged at the border or the ports of entry. What I can tell you from our cases and the work that we do across the United States and across the world is that virtually all the fentanyl that we are seizing in the United States is coming from Mexico, and we do believe that much of that is coming through ports of entry in California and Arizona. But again, I would defer conversation or questions specifically about the port to DHS.
Okay, and to the extent that are they coming through the hands of vulnerable people seeking, fleeing their country?
I would have to defer that question, Senator, to the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me ask a question maybe you can answer, and that is, in Mexico, dealing with this problem without a partner in Mexico is not possible. The two cartels that you mentioned emanate from Mexico. It's impossible to tackle fentanyl trafficking without a productive partnership with Mexico. However, there are obstacles to improving cooperation. Mexico's increased politicized National Prosecutor's Office has shown little appetite to prosecute fentanyl-related cases. Collusion between cartels and Mexican authorities is a recurring challenge, as seen in the ongoing trial of former Security Minister Garcia Luna. And Mexican authorities seem unwilling to acknowledge that the vast majority of fentanyl entering the United States is manufactured in clandestine labs in Mexico. So what is it that we are doing with the López Obrador government to change that reality? As you go after these cartels, is it your assessment that the primary obstacles to improving cooperation with Mexican authorities to combat fentanyl trafficking is that either we don't have a willing partner or that, in fact, the state itself is infiltrated by the cartels?
Senator, thank you for that question. We believe Mexico needs to do more to stop the harm that we're seeing. As I stated, what we're seeing is that these two cartels in Mexico, the Sinaloa and the Jalisco cartel, are dominating and controlling the entire global supply chain of fentanyl, and they are operating throughout Mexico. The Sinaloa cartel, we believe, is operating in 19 of 32 Mexican states, and the Jalisco cartel is operating in 23 of 32 Mexican states. What we know is that Mexico in the past worked relentlessly from 2012 to 2015 to disrupt one of the most violent criminal networks in Mexico, the Zetas, and they were effective at dismantling that cartel. We want Mexico to do the same thing here, to make their top operational priority also to defeat the two cartels that we believe are responsible for the fentanyl as well as the methamphetamine that is responsible for the loss of American lives today.
But that's not the present state of Mexico's will. Secretary Robinson?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I would say that in the conversations we've had, Mexico is willing to do more. They have actively engaged with us both through the U.S. U.S.-Mexico bicentennial framework, where they have committed to doing more. They've also committed to doing more in the discussions we've had in the North American Drug Dialogue. What we've been asking Mexico to do is put more resources into this effort, which is, obviously for Mexico and the Mexican government, a domestic issue. For us, it's an international issue. For us, it's a national security issue. The amount of resources they put into this effort is, for them, a domestic issue, and it's something that we're trying to deal with.
I have to be honest with you, I don't see it. just don't see it. I don't see the willingness, I don't see the urgency, I don't see the commitment, I don't see the actions that would indicate to me that Mexico is being a good partner. Have you talked to our ambassador there about this? Is he engaged on this issue?
Yes, yes, and yes to both questions.
Well, I hope he's vigorously engaged on the issue because, you know, we start with China and precursor criminals, and we need to create an international coalition that pressures China. They promote themselves as a big counter-narcotics nation, quite on the contrary, just from my perspective. And then we have our next-door neighbor who, this is a critical issue, and I just don't see it happening. And I have to be honest with you, if the good overtures to try to get them to act is not working, then there has to be other considerations. I just think that we work with our Mexican friends with kid gloves on this issue. And I just is fundamentally wrong. I don't know how many more lives have to be lost for Mexico to get engaged. If this was in the reverse, they'd be all over us. President López Obrador would be all over us in this regard. Lastly, can you work, Administrator? Can your people work freely with Mexican counterparts? Are you concerned about the information, the intelligence, the security of what you're trying to do with your counterparts in Mexico?
Senator, thank you. Thank you for the question. And there are three ways in which we believe that we would like to see Mexico cooperate far more with DEA and with the United States. The first, and this is under the bicentennial framework, the first is information sharing. We are not getting information on fentanyl seizures. We are not getting information on seizures of precursor chemicals. And that kind of information, as you rightly state, is vital for both countries, both for Mexico and for the United States. Second, we are very concerned about the clandestine labs across Mexico, and we have offered and continue to offer and stand ready to work in partnership with Mexican authorities to dismantle and take down those clandestine labs throughout Mexico jointly and to be of any service that we can. And finally, the last point you just mentioned, the Garcia Luna trial, which is a DEA investigation. The trial is ongoing in the Eastern District of New York this week. One of the things we are looking for Mexico to do is to arrest and extradite more individuals to the United States. Last year, Mexico extradited 24 drug-related defendants to the United States, but there are 232 drug-related defendants that are awaiting extradition. So this is also a critical part of our work. And again, we're working globally across the world as we're now tracking these cartels in 40 different countries. But it is vital that we be able to work in Mexico as well.
Senator Risch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Robinson, I have the president's readout from his conversation with Xi Jinping